welcome to the Engineering Tools panel. And we thought to kick off, we want to give each of you a chance to give a talk about what your company does. I think everybody will hopefully know, Vijay, what your company does. Before that, though, just to frame it first, you could look at the title and be like, engineering tools. You guys are all engineering tools. That seems sort of back office. It's actually the most important thing in the world for the most important companies in the world. So we thought that would be a fun framing for this afternoon. But Vijay, why don't you start? Tell us about stattic briefly.
Well, I'm Vijay Raji, founder, CEO of stattic. Thanks for coming to our conference. So stattic is a data platform. So we started off with experimentation and then added a lot more adjacent products. And so feature flagging, analytics, visualization, and then we want to continue adding more and more on the insights and intelligence side. So the idea is like, if we provide data and enable data-driven decisions for people and democratize data, people will be able to move much faster and build better products faster. And so it kind of like, does intersect quite a bit with the engineering tools. One of the stuff, in my keynote, I was talking about like how many people are using stattic in different ways. And so we have product managers, engineers, data scientists, even designers and marketers are starting to like find value in data. So yes, we want to draw all of that intersection into like the, providing better data for people to make better decisions.
Guillermo?
Yeah, I think there's a common, it's loud. There's a common meta thread in our company's history as well. So I'm the founder and CEO of Vercel. Vercel makes it really easy for companies of all sizes to build exceptional web experiences. And a part of building a web experience is that you need the developer tool. You need a framework. And thanks to Meta open sourcing a technology called React, we created a framework called Next.js, which now has over 1.2 million monthly active developers. It powers a lot of the great web applications on the planet, from e-commerce to data, SaaS, marketing, and a lot of the great AI applications of today. The other part of what we build at Vercel is the infrastructure to make it really, really easy for people to deploy and serve these exceptional web experiences. And I think part of building an exceptional web experience is that it's not a fixed point in time and space. Building something truly exceptional, I loved what the previous speaker said about building rocket ships on top of rocket ships. You have to have this super innovative, iterative mindset. You have to experiment a lot. You have to get data. You have to personalize experience. So the data can't just exist in the data warehouse. Data at its best, it's powering a dynamic, personalized, unique web experience, a great product experience. And so Vercel takes the stance that let's help companies iterate faster, discover what that next thing is, and make that process very, very delightful, both for developers and consumers.
Kari?
Hey, I'm Kari. I'm CEO, co-founder of Linear. And yeah, so like describing Linear, it's a purpose-built platform for planning and building products. And kind of meta is that we are kind of like the back office. We are helping the teams to actually build the things day to day. So whenever you have an engineering organization or a product organization, you need to coordinate like what's on the roadmap, what are the projects we're working on, who is working on them, how do we communicate progress. So to me, it's like exciting to have. There's like many of the like best companies today use Linear, like Vercel included, to build their products. So we're kind of like behind everything, helping these teams to focus on what they do best, which is to actually like innovate the new features or new platforms or those new rocket ships. And like our mission is just like we are there to help all these companies and ideally streamlines a lot of this kind of meta work where you're actually not building the things, but you are more like talking about it or communicating or coordinating or planning. We want to make it as easy as possible so most of the engineering or product organization effort can actually go into building those next things. So that's what we do. Meta, Facebook is not using us, but a lot of other companies are. And so I think like in the end, what it's about is that like hopefully we can create that like more of that efficiency for all of these companies in the industry.
I'm already going off script. This is the thing that's like occurring to me. So there's two trends that feel kind of conflicting to me. One is this thing that David opened the conversation with. If you are a technology organization as your core competency, it means that you are able to build, test, iterate, and discover product more quickly than other companies. So you can kind of win in your respective market with your core competency being, we build technology that enables us to build our product. The flip side of that is we live in this era of AI, and V0 from Vercel is actually a great example of this. You can achieve way more as not a developer, not a technologist than ever. So how did anyone have a good idea of how do you sort of reconcile these things of the most important thing is actually to be a team of technologists to build something great, and also you don't really need to be a technologist anymore because of AI?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start describing V0 for those that don't know. It allows you to talk to an assistant that is an expert in web development. So it can answer questions about Next.js, React, all those tools, but it can also go and create software for you. So right off the bat, one of the things that was most fascinating about our most recent V0 launch, we sort of launched a major new version of the product. I started noticing a few interesting internal patterns from the data. Number one, the product had a lot of daily active users. A lot of AI products struggle with retention. They launch, they have a great demo, they go viral in X, you buy them perhaps, and then a week later, what was that? Well, on to the next one. And so we're very happy internally that before we launched it, it was actually an experiment being tracked. We had it under a feature flag, it was not out to the world, etc. But the emergent thing that really stood out to me that I think addresses your question was the most active users were folks that weren't web engineers by training. Our head of brand design, who is exceptional at the creative thinking and work and like coming up with cool ideas and like visions of the future, but could not go and implement, was using V0 every single day because now he could put his ideas and bring them into reality, bring them into working code, share a prototype of a working thing.
And we've got a graph up behind.
Yeah.
In case anybody's wondering, did the launch work?
Of what has happened over 3 weeks is that we did as many generations as we'd done in the year prior, and we 4x'd ARR.
And to be clear, what the product does is you literally type into a box, design me, code me the front end of a website.
Yes,
that does
or you
X, Y,
paste
Z.
an image, which is even more shocking, honestly. Like, you just do a drawing or you take a screenshot of something that you've already seen and you paste it and it'll generate the code. The fascinating thing, I think, that is enabling this is AIs are getting very good at following directions. And so if the very first thing that it gives you is not up to your standard, you just give feedback to the AI and it'll do it. Actually, I have a funny anecdote. You were asking earlier, like, what are the things that you've learned from the data? We started noticing a lot of feedback in the tool that said, oh, I got this error when I pasted it into my code base. Here's the error. So they would tell us, Vercel, the creators of the tool. And every single time, we noticed that if they had said that to the AI would have solved their problem. And so we needed to create an innovative UI patterns to say, hey, if this is not quite to your liking, don't tell us, the creators of the tool, don't file a support ticket. Just tell the AI and it'll fix it. And so I do think the world is changing very rapidly. I think, maybe to summarize, folks are gaining more skills. I don't think we're entering a world where the human input is not there, but it's someone that is a design can now suddenly become a design engineer. Someone that is an engineer can now get insights into design. You can use AI for exploration. Sometimes I give the AI very vague things that are like kind of in my mind. I joked recently that I shipped my first PRD as a CEO because I used the AI to complete a vague idea in my head. It created a working prototype, and then I handed to the team the idea. So it's really bringing context that perhaps is not fully baked in your head. It's just fascinating to see what's happening. And honestly, I don't have all the answers of like, what does software engineering look like in 5 years? Because it's hard to even describe what it looks like next week. But it's exciting.
Next year, this panel might not be called engineering tools, but just tools,
Tools,
for everybody.
tools for thought. Yeah.
You mentioned design. Kari, I want to ask you specifically, because we were chatting about this in our interview with you earlier. You all took a design-led approach to bug trackers, which is a very, very counterintuitive approach. And I'm curious if maybe you could speak, and Guillermo and Vijay chime in too, your thoughts on the role of design in engineering tools.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same as role in design and everything. So if you think about any kind of product out there, the chairs, the space here, or anything, it's like design to me, it's about providing like a great experience. And the insight we had with Linear from the beginning is that, or like also the goal we had is like we want to build something, the best tool for this specific group of users or this specific like software teams. And I think like if you just distill what Linear or these kind of tools, project management tools really are about, it's about communication and coordination between the people in the organization. So it's still, sometimes people think like, well, maybe AI can do this, but I think it's still, yeah, maybe AI can help with it, but in the end, you are still like, what you're doing is you're communicating with people, and that's like the important part of it. And the system or the product is just there to do it in a more like organized way than let's all gather in this room and try to talk about it. So why the design matters there is that I think there's like a problem in the industry that we get attracted to a lot of new tools and new fancy things, and companies sometimes adopt these things, but they're not actually used, and there's like retention problem and engagement problem. And if we saw that like if we make this tool really feel good to the engineers and to the teams, they were more likely to use it because it's just like a human nature. Like if something feels bad to you, you're gonna avoid it. It's like evolution give us pain because it wants us to go away from the pain. And so in software, it's similar. It's like if you're feeling this pain of using these tools every day, and this is a tool that pretty much the engineer has to use every day, then you are avoiding it. And sometimes when we talk to companies, the leadership might say like, yeah, things are great, we have these tools, things are working. But then when you go talk to the engineers, they're actually like using pen and paper instead of their issue tracking tool because they hate it so much. So there's a long way saying that like while in the end we sell the software to the organization, we think that the value, the real information gets entered into the system, and the communication happens if the people are actually there. And if the experience is good and enjoyable, they're more likely to be there and update their things more frequently. So we've seen like a lot of success with this, that we are, most cases when we do a pilot with the company, we see like a huge engagement or like improvement in engagement, like 50% people are using, the pilot team is using more of our software versus the legacy option. We also see like a lot of higher satisfaction, like 60% or more, that like the teams are feeling, which also like gives us like this, it's not just our feelings like, yeah, we built the best product or the better product than some other tools, but it also gives us this metric to see that we are actually doing that, and teams are feeling that or seeing that, and that obviously help us to close these customers. And that people choose Linear or companies choose Linear because they see the value in that, and they see like now our teams are actually using the tools and doing the work they need to do.
Vijay, question for you. And I think actually I want to hear other folks' thoughts on it too. It's kind of a product strategy question and ultimately a business strategy question. As a CEO, you tend to start with a beachhead and expand with more and more products to deliver more value to customers. And at some point you start incorporating language like one-stop shop, single pane of glass, source of truth. And everyone around you is also doing that. So everyone's bulking up. Everyone's becoming this single pane of glass and the source of truth. And at some point, the like rational actor thing to do is figure out some framework to say what we are and what we aren't. How do you draw bounds around your product suite of things that make sense for your company and things that you should leave to other companies?
Yeah, I think in the beginning you start with something small, a narrow sliver. So if you think about like even Stat6's history, we said, okay, we cannot build a kitchen sink because nobody wants to buy a kitchen sink. You know, if you gotta like try and sell platform from day one, nobody understands what platform you are. So you have to pick one specific sliver, and you want to be really, really good at it because, you know, people in the industry, they care about the best performing vendor, and so they are going to go put their money where, you know, you are the best. And so we wanted to go invest in experimentation. Our stats engine bolstered that up really, really well. And then you start to think about like, okay, well, when you're expanding on your adjacencies, some of these are extremely valuable adjacencies that you can provide super important functionality by just small amounts of incremental work. At which point, then you kind of like, okay, well, now I want to be a platform. Now I want to provide everything, you know, because you're spending so many different, you know, contracts on different vendors. So could we provide value across the board? Once you reach that stage, then you have to start thinking about like, how do I differentiate now? Because everybody wants to be the same platform. So what are the differentiating factors? In fact, like I want to go back to Kari's point about design, right? Design, number one point of design is to make things accessible. Look, if you just want to provide functionality, you would end up with command line tools. And command line tools will give you the same level of functionality, but not everyone will be comfortable using command line tools. Then you want to like actually provide some UI. And then if you want to provide UI for every single feature of your product, then you'll end up with 200 different knobs that nobody knows what to do with those knobs. So now you have to like pare back on like what the actual design is, at which point you're talking about delight. So you've gone from like accessibility to delight. That in itself is a differentiator. So if you think about, you know, a data tool, you know, at Statsig, we hired, I think the first hire we made outside of like the core engineering team was a head of design. Because even for a data tool, you need, actually more important for data tools, like you need a good design system. You need to like provide the right things, the right defaults, the right, you know, metrics that you should be looking at. And so if you think about like, you know, what is Statsig differentiator? It's like accessibility. Everyone in your company should be able to use Statsig. Delight, you know, are you deriving delight by using this product? It should not like frustrate you. It should actually give you answers and, you know, lead you to the pit of success. You know, you've heard of pit of success, right? So you kind of like, can the tool lead you to the pit of success? Those are all kind of like, you know, when I think about our platform, what should our differentiator be? That's what it is.
So then what's your heuristic for should we add this additional new piece of functionality or not?
Yeah, I think there is a time at Statsig where we were building in vacuum. This is where you kind of like have a hypothesis, you have a vision, and you believe so strongly in it that you are like, okay, well, I'm going to go build it and I'm going to launch it. It is important that you get out of that vacuum as quickly as possible. So once you gather a set of customers, then a lot of your roadmap is informed by what they need. You know, you talk to your customers and you kind of like get back 100 different feature requests. Then you kind of like go through the prioritizations phase and kind of like, does this apply to this? Do we want to be a company that provides this kind of like, you know, value? And that's kind of like how we've iterated. We've iterated based on feedback. We decide whether this makes sense for Statsig, and then we decide we want to go build or not. And so I think it's a better way of building than to like have okay, well, we think we should go build this out of the blue.
Makes sense. Of course, the founder of Statsig would answer it. You let the customers inform, then you sift through the data, and then you decide.
Guillermo, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was going to share one of the heuristics that we use. So I started the company by starting this front-end framework and the infrastructure to host it. So we always had this thesis of focus on the user experience, focus on the design, and then work backwards to the implementation. And so over the years, the challenge sometimes is that customers keep asking for more and more and more, and you need some North Star for what does make sense for us to build and where does it make sense to partner. And so, for example, customers do have, when they're going through digital transformation and they choose Vercel, they do have, in many cases, data platform needs. They need tools for experimentation. So because we're all about that front-end experience and we want to keep doubling down on when you visit a Vercel website, you should know it's built with Vercel because of how good it feels, is I'm not going to make a huge difference if I build the data platform myself or not. And there's experts in the world that I can partner with. So we built a marketplace. And now you can sort of still have that ease of use of like, if I need a solution for experimentation, I can get it with one click or one command, because some of our developers do love the terminal. And the other heuristic that I found that is really interesting is brand permission. Like, if tomorrow the customer asks you for a sports car that's static flavored or colored, it might be a little weird to go to market and to get into cars just because the customer asks. And I think that comes up a lot. Just yesterday on Twitter, someone said, "Hey, can you build a Vercel watch?" And I was like, "What? A Vercel watch? What do you want in it?"
You guys kind of have a brand by which I could imagine what a Vercel watch would look like.
True, one day. But not now. Not now. I have to stay focused, and I think the other piece is focus. I would love to hear also what Carrie thinks on this, but staying focused and perfecting and polishing is underrated. And customers you might think customers don't care about this, but anytime we go that extra mile to polish a thing, it almost becomes like a marketing campaign. People will go and tell their friends, "Holy crap, I just found this amazing detail over here. Everyone come look." And so you have to find that balance between like the relentless ambition and expansion potential and polishing and sweating the details.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. That we see it a lot too in our product, that like whenever we like polish things, people will notice. And like especially in this, I think, audience, like developers and technical people, it's like they have the, like they can see it. Like in some other products or categories or markets, it might not be the case, but I always think like if you're building something for the professionals, you kind of have to be better at it than everyone else, like ideally better than they are, because you need to, like if you're worse than they are, like you lose the respect of the customers or the users. So I think it's like we talk a lot about how do we build products or do things. And the pressure on me is that like we really want to show that we're doing this better, because then we can gain the respect in the market. And just like your original question, like a quick comment on like an answer is that I think about it as workflows. So there's a way of thinking about products or platforms in a way that we're just adding features to this, and whatever feature makes us money, let's add it. But that's like I think the AWS kind of approach. Like you just keep adding stuff into this big pile of things, and it kind of works for them because it is not really, I wouldn't say it's like a workflow type of tool, but I think a lot of tools, I think everyone here is more like a workflow tool. You are trying to do something. And so then where I draw the boundary is, or where how we think about the workflows is like, what is the natural next thing a person would do in this situation? And like, should we help them to do that? And there's sometimes a limit, like for example, we don't help them like host their code or something. We also like integrate with GitHub, like where the code versioning or collaboration happens. We're not trying to do that, but we know that when someone works on an issue, they do need to communicate that there is actually some code written now about this. So then we try to bring that into Linear because it's like useful for people to know. So it's more like what is my heuristic is that like what is natural for the workflow, and not try to go like just jump just like completely somewhere else that like it's not connected in any of the existing product workflows.
Makes total sense. On a slightly different, well, actually a very different topic, I'm super curious to ask each of you about your go-to-market motion. And the reason I'm curious is that if we were to rewind 10 years ago, 15 years ago, despite the fact that all of your products are all used by engineers, product people, developers, marketers within a company, the buying decisions would have been made by the CIO or maybe the CTO or maybe a VP of engineering. And I'm curious what it's like today. Is it bottoms up? Is it still top down? Is it both? Maybe each of you. I'd just love to hear how you approach it.
Yeah, our mix shift has changed quite a bit in the last 2-3 years. So when we started Statsig, nobody really knew who we were, and so a lot of the business came from inbound, right? So whether it is developers signing up on our portal, picking up our SDK and building their hobby applications, we still get a lot of people signing up on a weekly basis. That's kind of like our biggest pipeline that comes through. And then we had our first contract was through an ex-Facebook product manager who went on to do a startup. And then, they came in and they were like, do you have SOC 2 compliance? Do you have an NDA? Do you have ISO? And we were like, what are those?
We have software for you.
Yeah, so
We have a company that can help you with that if you.
we use Vanta, yes.
Thank you.
No, we've come a long way then from there. So fast forward right now, our go-to-market with marketing, we have definitely established our brand out there. People know about us. People are now reaching out to us. We know what that enterprise sale motion is. We have a large sales team that is actually going and outbounding and finding value by outbounding. So it's in a way we've also adapted to now we have a sales motion, we have a self-serve motion. It works hand in hand. There's people that have moved from one company to another company that have brought Statsig along with them. We get inbound through that way. So it is a mixed shift. And I don't know how things are going to be in 2-3 years from now. Things are changing so dramatically. We'll have to wait and see.
G, I heard you use the phrase digital transformation, which leads me to believe you are doing sales to enterprises.
It's so true. Guilty as charged. But it's real. By the way, it's happening. I was skeptical too, but it's happening out there. There's companies that are not digital, and they're transforming. So there's just no better word. Sorry about that. But funny enough, the most recent conversation that I had on that level that you were talking about, like CIO, chairman, they don't get into the weeds of what Next.js even is or what Vercel does for engineers, but they want to improve their businesses. So when I got into that conversation, the referrals, the surround sound that person had heard about Vercel was what got me into that opportunity. And funny enough, it was because of a startup. There was a connection between a startup and this company. And startups are your biggest advocates, especially when they're successful. So it's almost like, as a company like Vercel, we're almost like Y Combinator on some level. If we help the best startups in the world succeed and build amazing products, they'll become our biggest advocates. In many cases, it happens very directly. They get acquired by a giant company that is noticing a threat. And then that company was using Vercel, and then we get into that larger conglomerate because they bought it for the technology. They bought it for the technology advantage, or they bought it for the iteration velocity advantage. So sometimes it happens as directly as just M&A. We M&A our way into larger deals. But even on a more philosophical level, we're talking about this idea of helping the world shift from consumption to creation. And so the idea is that every person on the planet can use Vercel to create. It happens very concretely today, I would say, in San Francisco, because everyone has an idea, everyone has a side project, everyone has a hustle, everyone has their next big thing that they're dreaming about. So I've seen CTOs that have taken us into bigger enterprises that met us because they were playing with Vercel during the weekend. And we want every single person to have that opportunity to create. And then if we're doing a good job for them, they'll take it into other places. So while we do have sales and outbound motions and things like that, the product and the distribution is still at the core. And I like that idea of use your product-led growth or use your distribution to build up that surround sound of who you are and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, and I also have a lot of similar comments to Vercel. And I think, for us, it's both. So we started with early days Linear, we were focusing more on the startups, the smaller companies, but we are still focusing on that. So similarly like Vercel, I think today we have some data or charts about 40% of the YC companies actually use us. And that's something we like to see, and ideally the number would be 100%. Because we see that Linear, the success comes from capturing the the next generation of companies, as well as at the other end, like converting some of the older, like larger companies in linear as well. So there's a lot of self-serve that happen. There's even sometimes public companies or large companies, they just like sign up and like buy it on their credit card. So the way we think about the coda market and the sales is more like what is a good experience we can provide to the customer. If they want to talk to sales, we're happy to like talk to them as much as they want. Like we're not pushing anything like or this needs to happen in this specific timeline or this specific way. Like we are happy to help them to like run the pilot or do whatever is necessary or what they would like us to do. And I just talked to the sales team this week, and every time when we hire new people, I tell them like that the sales is part of the product experience. So your job as a salesperson is also like help these people who are not yet the users or customers, but to like feel the product or feel the experience already. So there's that, and like similarly, we have had these cases where there's this like champions being born, like linear champions, where they switch jobs and they go from one company to another, and they're kind of like in their wake, they're bringing linear along, and like we're just capturing these companies, and they do this because just they want to use the product and they don't want to use the other product. So there's no incentive really other than that to them to do it. And we also recently had this like similar situation happen where like a Fortune 20 company acquired this startup and made the startup as their new like division in the company, and that startup was using linear. And one of the CEO's kind of requirements for this large corporate was that we want to use linear and some 2 other tools. And so eventually we got the deal done that like we could make this contract with the large Fortune 20 company. So it's not the whole company is using it, but the division is. So that's also like interesting, like where the product like that like the acquisition can like take you into these larger deals.
So I think we've just unlocked the new era of M&A-led growth. Is the successor to product-led growth?
We just need the regulations to
I was gonna
change
say,
that.
yeah, not in this
Accelerate M&A, like, come on.
We've got an argument for the Justice Department here to.
I'll submit my suggestion.
If anybody up here says anything political, just cut their mics, please.
Amazing.
We are going to open it up for audience question, but as y'all think on that, one more down the line for our panel here. What is something that you often hear in the tech zeitgeist where you're like, I actually completely disagree with that? And Kara,
I just had one. I just had one that went so viral that I'm still getting like fan letters that are not so fans. I posited that offices are great on Twitter. I just made that statement. Offices are great for...
I said no politics.
Yeah, it is a hot topic, it turns out. So, context. We have an office in SF. We have a few offices around the world, and we also hire remote people. And but I had just had a great interaction at the office with a problem that, given my experience, I would have projected if we had not been at the office collaborating on this gnarly problem. It would have taken a long time, and it was kind of the solution for it was very spontaneous. The conversation felt great. It was very natural. We could put it into practice right away, etc. And I felt like, okay, offices are great. And I put it out into the world, and yeah, people have thoughts. Is the takeaway. And yeah, I think obviously there is every company has sort of a DNA, and when I started Vercel, I was one person, and I was going to an office just to like transport myself into a different place. And but yeah, I think my hot take is when you're a fast-growing company with very large ambitions, I always think if my competitor has an office and they're all locked in and working hard and building that camaraderie between the individuals working there, it can be scary, right? Like a lot of the greatest things have been created that way. So that's my hot take of the day.
Well, you'll find, I think, sympathy with VJ on that one.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. In fact, yeah, Statsig is, other than the sales folks that are spread out throughout the U.S. and now in London, actually. So we We are an in-person company. We do have an office. People come in 5 days a week, and I cannot. I think part of it is like I believe like the conversations that happen in office it's very hard to like recreate if you have to like put the effort to go meet with people. So when you're a startup, you want to take as many advantages as possible against your competitors who are all out there. So if that is a very small competitive advantage, I'll take that. And recently I spoke with GeekWire, and that article got circulated among my friends group, and that was not a good conversation because most of my friends did not agree with it, and they were like, why are you out there talking about offices? So that was fun.
I'm actually on the other side of this.
Right.
So
I love this.
Well, I mean, I think to me, the remote in office, I don't think it's a little bit like, should you paint your office white or blue or something? It's like, I don't think, all of our competition are in-office companies, I would say, and doesn't make me any more worried. Because I think we still do good work, and arguably there's some really good work that happens, and we are a fully remote company and distributed in US and Europe. So I think there's a little bit the whole discussion, I think the past year with remote and in-person cultures, I think remote is just a different way of operating, and there is some benefits to that. And my biggest, what I understand or what my opinion on it is that remote actually provides more focus for the craft and for the product building than in offices are. I think at the office you can have all these conversations, but a lot of times conversations don't go anywhere, or they go weird directions, or it's a little bit. I think sometimes I worked in a lot of offices, and we had these meetings that everyone was super hyped about something, and the next day we realized this is a dumb idea. So it's not I think remote that you are I think you are actually more locked in to the work itself versus let's have fun conversations about things. So I think it's because the remote creates a little bit of that barrier. There's downsides to that as well, and I agree on that. But actually, it makes the output matter much more. What is the team actually outputting is the main thing everyone's focusing on, not who is in the meeting or who is in the room or who wasn't in there or what happened in the hallway or something. So I think there's this quality that happens, or quality and focus that can happen in remote organizations. So to me, I like it, and I think it's a good way to operate, but I also know that everyone agrees.
You're talking to a company that doesn't have an office here, so for all two people that we have. All right.
Wait. Was there, if anyone wants a 60-second we talked about one, we all piled on Guillermo's.
I'm trying to think about what are other things that I've tweeted that have divided people.
Well, Kari, I also know you forgive me for throwing you under the bus. We were having this conversation before as a prep call, AI this, AI that, and you're like,
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I think about it, it's you sent me out some questions before, and one of the questions what are some of the trends that happened in the past that were kind of harmful for the industry? And I think I was thinking about one of those trends was back in the day when Facebook was cool, was that everyone looking at the social products, and then they started thinking about hey, we should bring the social products into the enterprise because social products are so cool, without really thinking why. And so then we had this wave of companies doing this, and then there was let's make it more fun or more gamified or something. And there was this trend of doing these things, and I think that the core of the trend was correct, that maybe sometimes we actually do have better stuff on the consumer markets than we have in the enterprise. The experiences are more enjoyable and nicer. So I think that the core, the trend was correct. But most people just followed the copying what seems to be successful in other places and then copying it to their products. So to me, AI is a little bit in that state too, that I don't know if a lot of companies are actually thinking what is the AI actually doing for their product or for the workflow that people have in that product. So we think we've been using AI very sparingly in linear product. We just add it to part of the workflows where we think it actually can provide value. So we haven't added a chatbot into the product. because we just don't see that it's that useful for our type of product. So I think there's a little bit that AI this and that, like every company, like if you drive into that San Francisco, almost every billboard says like we are AI something for something. And again, it's like creates this like, there was some talk about differentiation before. You're not really differentiated if you are just doing what everyone else is doing. So I think there's a little bit this FOMO happening in the market that like if you don't have the AI chatbot in the tool, you are kind of falling behind. And we just don't think that way. We just let this play out and figure out what is actually the like really good use cases for AI in our product or similar products like ours. So we take what much more like let's wait and see approach than let's just try to do everything everyone else is doing.
You've probably seen the interview to Mark Benioff where he says that Microsoft just built Clippy and that he doesn't see a lot of value and like customers are not getting a lot of value because it's just Clippy. So I agree that if all you do is, I just need to add AI to my product at all costs, you might just ship things that don't actually get used or provide any value whatsoever. But actually, to also give credit to Microsoft, GitHub Copilot, when it came out as a software engineer, I was blown away beyond repair. Like, I was like, I can't imagine not having an AI assistant in my work. I just don't remember everything. It thinks creatively, so it might look at files and references and symbols and statistical observations about other code bases that it's learned on, and it just makes my life better. So for software engineering, I think AI is sort of like the home run use case. I always tell people like, I don't know if we were getting AGI tomorrow, 10 years, I'm actually not in that business. But I can tell you that even if AGI doesn't happen, for software engineers and creators, it very much feels like AGI. It's this like super powered rocket for the mind, and it's amazing. And I totally agree that you have to find true value for your domain, and you can just throw AI over the wall and hope it sticks.
Well, looks like V0 is on its way to doing that.
Yes.
All right. Then you're good.
I think what David meant to say was, all right, we're going to open it up for questions. Raise your hand if you would like Morgan to bring you a mic. And these can be questions about anything all day that anyone on stage spoke about.
All right, so I'm going to try to tie the last talk to the great stuff you guys just covered. So you guys are all known for helping teams build better products through engineering tools. The last awesome talk was about data teams. So I want to hear, if you don't mind, what you guys are doing with your data teams about your own products. Do you have data teams? Are they looking at your product analytics as engineering tools? How's it work inside your companies?
I can start if...
Yeah, I think mine is probably quick. So we are still a small company, so it's not like we have a huge data engineering organization. We also like our company on the product side. We run it much more that we like to talk to users and like talk to customers, and we focus more on that kind of feedback versus tracking things in the database or something. And the reason is that these kind of, in my mind, these kind of products or workflows, they're more complicated than some other, like, I don't know, Instagram, where there's like one feed and then you look at the feed and then you can measure if the people look at the feed more. But in our case, we don't think there's a one thing like people should be doing. That being said, we do have at least one person who is doing the data engineering work, and basically it's us for check assumptions we have. Like we think like this is used this much, or we think that when we are building something new, we want to see how is it being used. So we always think like data as a tool or like it provides some information, but it never makes any decisions in the product in the organization. So that's the way we operate, which is maybe different from other companies.
For us, something that perhaps is a little different from other data teams is we want to use data in order to accelerate product velocity. And so one of the things that we did at the beginning of the company, and we're now doing again with V0, is we want this direct connection to the user so that we can process their feedback in real time. Whether it's someone makes a comment on X or Hacker News or leaves us feedback on the product, we want to make sure that the creators of the product are directly connected to that real-time stream of information because it brings context into their work. It's very hard to plan and say, oh, this entire week we're going to do so-and-so, if in reality there's just a surge of feedback that says, hey, this feature is broken, or all of a sudden this thing slowed down. And so the data team has basically made observations about what are the right sets of metrics, reports that we get on Slack, real-time feedback that we get into the products, integration into products like linear and static and so on, and not only provide it to a specific product initiative like V0, but actually templatize it so that we can replicate that across all our product areas. So every product has some North Star metrics that are common foundations, like you probably want to see healthy engagement of your and usage of your product. But then there's very specific metrics. So for example, on V0, because we're generating, we care a lot about the time to first token that gets rendered on the screen. And so the developers also get daily reports of the deltas. And so all of that infra, I would see teams sometimes do it, like sometimes an engineer would say like, this is how I work, or we would acquire a company and they would bring in that best practice. Now we sort of standardized it. So if we spin up a new product initiative, it comes in with all that observability built in, plus the ability for that product area to customize it and make it their own.
We use Static inside Static to like inform product decisions, but I want to caution something here. You know, you don't want to use data as a crutch for not implying, you know, your product intuitions for those step function changes. The step function changes come from like your North Star, your intuition, your experience. You have to apply that based on what you know about your product, based on how your product is performing. You want to like go make those leaps. And then once you've made that leap, then how do you optimize around it to get the maximum out of that leap is where data really shines. Now, obviously, that's one aspect of data. The other one is like, you know, okay, well, you do want to know if something is not going right, if something is crashing out in the wild instantly, like in real time. So we use data for that as well. So yeah, so we, again, we use Static inside Static. We don't ship anything to our product, our customers before fully dogfooding it and making sure things are working.
Hey, Howie here. So early this month, there is a lot of fuss around the founder mode. I'm curious, I mean, your take on this, but in particular, what do you see the boundary or the limitation or the potential flaw of the founder mode? Because all of you are founders, so curious your take.
That's a good prompt for a hot take, right?
We're gonna live stream this to Guillermo's Twitter.
Did I weigh in on founder mode? I definitely weighed in on it internally because my fear was, oh my God, this is going to be immediately changed and transformed to suit any narrative that anybody in the world has. Like you can make founder mode a shell for whatever feelings you have about how to run a company. It's just like a really cool brand, right? So I had that thought, and I was like, hey, let's make sure that we align on what this is. And my biggest takeaway was I like hiring folks that operate with that founder mode energy. In fact, one of the things that I shared recently that folks really appreciated was Vercel has made a series of acquisitions of small companies that have been completely transformative for our trajectory. And when I think about what we acquired, it wasn't technology, and it wasn't pixels or designs. It actually was the people. It was the people bringing, I didn't have the brand founder mode, but within those product areas where we made those acquisitions, those people brought in that founder mode energy. And when I think about founder mode is, again, like you understand that sort of like the biological sort of background, the history of the product, why it exists. You build that direct connection to the customer. You feel the pain that the customers are having when you're a founder so much more acutely than perhaps if you're just, oh, there was a reorg, like things that people say at Meta or Google, oh, I just got reorged into this thing that I don't care about. So that's kind of like the opposite in my mind, the founder mode. And I think it's all about applying it judiciously and being thoughtful about what are the good parts of what a founder brings to an organization.
Yeah, no, to me, it means like the founder mode means that the founder can still care about the things that happen in the company. And I think that we're not there yet, like we're not that big that like this is happening that much, but I can see like, for example, I did work at Airbnb and I could see some of this like when the company is large, there's a lot of layers to it. And what can happen to you as a founder, you kind of start feeling that you're now removed from the company. You are now put on the bench. You're not on the field anymore. You're just on the bench kind of watching the gameplay, but you cannot even necessarily always tell people what to do, or it's not okay because you have to follow the chain of command or something, versus like you actually care about the what's happening on the field, and then you shouldn't be there always pushing or telling people what to do, but or what to do next. But there's probably times that you should intervene. That this seemed crazy to me. That why are we even doing this or talking about this? And then like maybe sometimes that you are just like misaligned. Like you don't know what the team is trying to do. But sometimes it's also like the teams can start going in very like weird directions, and you kind of have to like bring it back. So to me, it's more just like that as a founder, you're allowed to still care what happens in a company, and you're not just put on the sidelines and let the other people run the company.
I think another call out is, it used to be that in Silicon Valley, a common thing for investors to do was the tech person, the innovator, the inventor starts the company. And then when they get funding, they bring in manager mode. They bring in the suits to run the company. I think founder mode is about, okay, even when the founder is the CEO, is actually celebrating that they have permission to intervene, because there's founder and CEOs who can put themselves into manager mode. So at the end of the day, they achieve that boring result of just like letting things get away from them. And so I think it's very healthy in that, hey, founder mode is about like bringing back that energy of like doing what's right, not what the process told you or what the MBA consultant that's 26-year-old just told you. And just do the right thing for the customer and the product.
Yeah, I think, so if you split this up, there's two parts to founder mode. One is the deep care, the feeling the pain that, Guillermo was talking about. Like, I understand the customer's pain, like, intuitively. The second stage is the permission to actually go do something about it. So with the founder, you kind of like have the permission to like walk up to that engineer who owns that piece of code and then like, let's go fix this thing. Whereas if you're a manager who were brought in, without the capital, you actually don't have that permission to go down to like 3 layers below and say node-to-node communication. Like, I'm going to go, ask this engineer to go fix it, because you're kind of like in this information conduit mode. This actually happens even in large companies when you have managers that built their own teams versus managers that inherited teams. There's a big difference between the capital or the permission or the mode that you operate in. If you built your own team, you feel so much more comfortable just going deep in and fixing things, versus like, if you inherited a team, you kind of like have to walk on eggshells. So those are the two aspects of like founder mode I think are important, but I also agree that it's being weaponized in many, many different ways, and like everything can now be, swept under founder mode, and every action is now justifiable.
Someone took a screenshot of a code commit that I made to one of my side projects, and I titled it founder mode, because I couldn't come up with a better commit title. So I just called it founder mode, push. Like, please deploy.
Wow. Well, what a great note to end a great day on. Thanks to all of you for being here, for staying here all day. Thank you to the so many wonderful people who came and sat on this stage and who we interviewed back in the studio. That'll all be live, I believe, on StatSig's website in the next set of weeks. So tune in for that. And thank you to Kari, thank you to Guillermo. Most importantly, thank you to VJ for hosting us all. It's been a great day, and we look forward to hanging out with you outside.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, David. Thank you for hosting this panel and for also participating in the panel earlier.
Of course.